Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to look at blue-white control in Pioneer. We're going to look at the cards that are played in blue-white control, the reason that they're played, and we're going to touch on a little bit how to play the deck. Let's do it. So this is my Pioneer blue-white control deck. Let's start with the lands. It's blue and white lands, obviously. I think the only interesting things that the lands are doing are these lands. So we're playing our spell lands. That's very, very obvious. You should play at least one. There's an argument for multiple of these, but you should play at least one because they're pretty free besides cards like, you know, the castles or Glacial Fortress. Oh, we have Field of Ruin as well. We're playing Field of Ruin because sometimes you can mess up other decks' mana. For example, against Phoenix, they don't play any mountains, so there are some games that you can just mess stuff up. There's also plenty of lands that actually do stuff, like the castles, like the man lands. And being able to stop those is really, really awesome, and it doesn't really bother us at all. Remember, we're only a two-color deck. We're playing one Hall of the Storm Giants. The reason we're only playing one Hall of the Storm Giants is that there isn't really a situation where we're okay with a land coming in tapped past, you know, turn 2. It's really important that we have, you know, untapped lands straight through. And very rarely does the game come down to like hitting with our man land. I think one is pretty free. Multiple, it gets kind of harder. I can see playing 2 though. And we're playing one of both of the castles. Again, it's really important things come in untapped. There are cards in our deck that are not plains or islands or whatever, you know, like the Glacial Fortress, like Deserted Beach, you know, like the cards we just talked about. So again, for a similar reason to Hall of the Storm Giants, really important things come in untapped. So we're only playing one of each of these, you know, to make a 1/1 human and to be able to scry 2. It's really nice because it's just stuff that we can do with our extra mana. So this is a pretty classic blue-white control deck. We're running counter spells. We have draw spells to try to, you know, make sure we hit our land drops and whatnot, and make sure we hit our threats in the late game. And then we have like late game threats and things that really, really take over the game. One of these cards is Censor. Censor is an early game counterspell and can really like kind of snipe people, and the existence of Censor can make people play slightly different than they normally would, like play slightly off curve, which is totally awesome for us. And then like after they play around Censor and play slightly off curve, you're able to like cash it in for, you know, one of these late game cards. Even though this card is normally only good in the early game, sometimes you'll be able to snipe a late game card with it. Or if you draw it in the late game and you don't think you're going to be able to use it, you can cycle it into something that might actually matter. It's really a solid card, and it helps us hit our land drops and can, you know, be a heavy hitter when it needs to be. I'm playing a 1 of Make Disappear. I think, you know, just these early 2-mana counter spells really matter, especially as, like, you know, the Boats deck gets better. I want to be able to counter their early cards. So I wanted, like, if I could play it, I'd play 5 Censors. I'm playing 2 Dovin's Veto. Dovin's Veto just being like a we're done arguing counter target non-creature spell can't be countered. It's just, you know, adds to our 2-mana counterspell suite. It wins these counter wars, and I think the mirror match, you know, it's really good against Phoenix, etc., etc. And it being 2 mana versus 3 really matters. And we're playing 3 Temporary Lockdown. So the reason we're playing so many cards in the main deck that might not be good against some decks is because, especially the white deck, I think we're slightly unfavored towards. It's pretty good against mono green, being able to hit their mana dorks and the, you know, the enchantments on the lands. I think it has enough places that it's fine in the main deck. Especially since if a deck goes underneath us, we can just die, and that's awful. We're playing 2 Saw It Coming. Again, just something to do with your mana to be able to foretell and then play it in the late game. A pseudo 2-mana counterspell, you know, to be able to use our mana, but also just like can be cancel if it needs to be. We're playing 3 Absorb. Absorb is awesome. You know, it is a cancel where you gain 3 life. Again, if we're being aggroed down, you know, the 3 life can really matter, and being able to counter things obviously matters. Playing 4 Wandering Emperor. Wandering Emperor is just an amazing control card, right? So it has Flash, can defend itself, can get rid of something that's attacking you, and you gain life. So it's like great against like aggro and stuff like that. But the biggest thing about having Flash is that like it can just chill and end the game as long as you're able to protect it. But also, like, you're able to leave counter magic up. You're able to leave, you know, removal spells and whatever up. You're able to leave your draw spells up. And then if you don't feel like you need them or they play around them or whatever, you can just bring in Wandering Emperor, or like, you know, they can attack and you can just get rid of Wandering Emperor. And like similar to Censor, the existence of Wandering Emperor makes it really awkward to make attacks as your opponent. We're splitting our 4-mana draw spells, Behold the Multiverse and Memory Deluge. A lot of decks are playing 3 Memory Deluge now. I think Behold the Multiverse as a one of is really solid. Like, we're able to foretell it. You know, scry 2, draw 2 is excellent. And while it's like overall weaker than Memory Deluge, I think its versatility warrants a one of, and I think it's close enough to Memory Deluge. It's totally okay to be able to use it, especially since we really want to use our mana efficiently all the time and make sure we leave mana up for counter magic as much as possible. And again, 2 Memory Deluge. This is like one of our primary cards that we're digging for stuff for. 3 Supreme Verdict, it's just like the classic blue-white control card. You know, can't be countered, destroy creatures, get very strong against like the boats deck, very strong against spirits, very strong against humans, etc., etc. We're only playing 3 Teferi Hero Dominaria, and the reason is that as the format gets more powerful and as formats get more aggro focused and lower to the ground, or even like combo focus, like tapping out on turn 5 for something to be spell pierced, or 5 mana is a lot. Rarely are we able to protect it in a reasonable amount of time against most decks. And then after it resolves, it often doesn't take over the game in like a lot of the situations that we're in. It's still important to have in our deck as a 3 of, because it is definitely one of our finishers. You know, if we can take over the game, if we can protect it. But as a 4 of, we don't need to see it every single game, especially with Wandering Emperor existing. We're playing 1 Farewell. It's definitely an awesome catch-all. Excellent against everything but Planeswalkers. And anything that commits anything but Planeswalkers to the board, Farewell solid against. We can really only afford to play it as a 1 of, though, because like 6 mana is a lot, especially since a lot of these like aggressive decks are playing either counter magic like spirits or are so low to the ground we're just never going to cast Farewell. We're playing 3 Shark Typhoon. Shark Typhoon is one of the best cards in our deck. It cycles similar to Censor, so we're able to find our land drops in the early game, but also makes a shark so we can block or be able to start applying pressure. It creates this like weird issue sideboarding for your opponent that if they don't keep in removal, we can just kill them with a shark because we want to be cycling this. And we're able to like cycle, seek our land drops, seek other cards that are good against these aggro decks and still be able to block. And very rarely, but it does happen, you cast that as an enchantment and take over the game with that. And we're playing a 2 of March of Otherworldly Light. It's just a great removal spell. It's really a catch-all. You know, we can get rid of cards that we don't want in our deck in some situations, or cards that like aren't going to do anything for like a really long time, and get rid of pretty much anything besides a Planeswalker. As far as our sideboard goes, you know, we have like Rest in Peace for decks like Phoenix and Absent Greasefang. The 4th Temporary Lockdown for these aggro decks, mostly humans and spirits. We're playing one of Lyra Dawnbringer and one of Baneslayer Angel. They fulfill the same role. When one comes in, the other comes in. It's for these aggro decks and these creature-focused decks. It allows us to fight with the board because there's not a lot of creatures in the format that can actually attack through any of these, especially when we're controlling them with all these other cards. The reason we have a 1-1 split is I think Lyra Dawnbringer is a little bit better than Baneslayer Angel, especially since there's no relevant demons or dragons. Obviously, you can't play 2 Lyras like side by side because they're legendary. So we play Baneslayer Angel just for the very, very slight corner case that we're able to cast both of these cards, which happens very rarely, but you know, it's important to get the 0.01% in. We're playing a 1 of Elspeth for, you know, these slower decks where you're realistically able to cast a 6-mana Planeswalker. It can take over the board, you know, with anything that isn't trample with the soldiers and give us a lot of time or destroy creatures, and is an awesome game ender against other slower decks or go big creature decks. Aethergust is really solid against slowing down, like Mono Red, is really, really good against boats, you know, and anything with relevant great red or green spells, obviously. Narset's Reversal is kind of a cool card, right? It's like a solid counter spell. It's mostly in our deck for cards like Treasure Cruise, which is really amazing. You know, if they like Treasure Cruise, exile most of their graveyard so they can't cast another Treasure Cruise, and then you're able to return it to their hand, they can't really cast it again, and you're able to draw 3 is really solid, especially since the Phoenix matchup can kind of be dubious, but finds a place in like most matchups where you want to be countering instants and sorceries anyway. 2 Mystical Disputes for basically any blue deck. Hullbreaker Horror for the mirror match or like these super go long slow decks. Rounding out the Dovin's Veto for these, you know, these 4 Dovin's Vetoes for decks that have a lot of non-creature spells that you want to fight over. And then 1 Dream Trawler, which kind of bridges the gap between our Angels and Hullbreaker Horror. It's definitely for these slow decks, but even in these medium speed creature decks, we bring in Dream Trawler for the lifelink and can help us run away with the game similar to how Teferi can. 6 mana can be kind of tough, but it does protect himself and can just own the game against decks like Red-Black because of the protection. So overall, this deck is very strong. It's been winning tournaments lately on Magic Online and putting up quite a few 5-0s. But if you're interested in playing classic blue-white control where you stop what your opponent's doing and then take over the game with something like a Teferi or an Angel or a Wandering Emperor or a Shark, NATO, and this deck is really, really awesome. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.